This is Colorado wide receiver and cornerback Travis Hunter.
Generational, used way too often, but I think it applies here in just how unique he is. He's basically football's Shohei Ohtani. I don't think that's an exaggeration. His corner tape is out of control good. His wide receiver tape is already great. Despite not even focusing on that side of the ball during team meetings throughout the entire season, you see him looking to the sideline to pick up plays already, and it still didn't matter. Almost had 100 catches, 15 touchdowns. His athleticism to me is the unique thing about him. Just Gumby in his movements. He's still super explosive. Him at the catch point is sensational. Him after the catch is sensational. So once he gets the route running and deep into the playbook, I think this guy's upside on offense is through the roof.
Yeah, this is an interesting prospect profile to do. We will talk about the cornerback stuff a little bit later on, but mainly focus on the wide receiver aspect of his game. And you talked about his athleticism being the special part. I would even package it as his movement being special. Like his releases are smooth as silk. He packages almost slow plus sudden in his releases, which is a perfect combination. Like he will slow play a corner with a step or two to get them out of position and then instantly works past them. And once he releases past the press corner, they have a really difficult time
Yep.
keeping up with him or even getting back on top. And then on top of that, his ball skills are unreal. I mean, his ISO contested catch wins, even if space isn't created because of his awesome ball tracking, he wins them. You know, he mossed two dudes against Washington State on a simple vertical route along the sideline. And then on top of that, he's not afraid to take massive hits in order to come up with a big catch. He took a huge hit over the middle of the field versus Stanford for a touchdown on an end breaker. It's the more you watch, the more you like. And it just so happens that he played over 100 snaps in 11 of 13 games this year for the Colorado Buffalo.
Yeah, there's one game against Texas Tech where he played 160 because he was playing so much on defense too. I mean, 160 snaps is ruthless. But yeah, I see the same thing. In zone coverage, like these big hole shots, he throws up the mailbox and he does that a lot. It actually makes me laugh.
I
But the
would too.
reason why he does is because just throwing the ball no matter what, you see on these big crossing routes. There's one where he catches the ball, basically Looney Tunes backflips into the air and then comes down with it. There's also these crossing routes over the middle where he catches it. You'll just see a spin move against Stanford, then with the acceleration to beat him to the pylon, used in the screen game where you see that acceleration. You talked about it in the releases, silky smooth. So everything about his athleticism is just exactly how you want it. And I see him. He posts these training videos where he works on how to land, and just his
Wow.
process is just interesting to him on how he attacks football. It's very unique. The instincts are there. He's just a natural football player, and you see that in basically every single part of his game.
Yeah, he moves like two of the best wide receivers in the NFL over the last 2 decades. Like he moves like Odell Beckham did. He moves like Justin Jefferson does right now. And that's not just pure athleticism in a straight line, the fastest, the most explosive. It is the combination of movements where you're almost like telling a story with how your head, your shoulders, your
Yep.
arms, your feet, every part of your body is moving in sync. And that's exactly what he does. Now, the most interesting aspect to me is that you and I spoke with Albert Breer of Sports Illustrated on this channel just before the NFL Combine. And the consensus at that time was that Travis Hunter would be a full time corner and part time wide receiver. I am now in the camp based on how these last few weeks have gone, where the tide has almost like fully turned on that. We don't know until he is drafted in the NFL. But again, the most notable part to me of that conversation is that's what he was at Colorado, is that he focused on the defensive side of the ball. We were told that he practiced as a defender on defense. He went to meetings on defense and then was told what routes to run when hitting the field on game day from literally the sideline. And with all of that in mind, he is still this good. Like he hasn't put the time and task in when it comes to playing the wide receiver position. I don't mean that as a knock or a negative. It's just amazing to me that he's been this good this quickly without working day in and day out on like the true wide receiver craft. And just imagine what it can look like when he does.
Yeah, I see the same thing. There's not that many routes where he's winning with his route running ability. He's just such a freak athlete. And like the other big thing, and I think that helps that he's played corner, is his feel for zone, when to throttle down,
100%.
when to accelerate, when to hit the gap. It is perfect. And you see that on defense as well. One thing on the corner stuff is he was sensational against man coverage, 0.44 yards per snap in man coverage there. His all the ball skills are there. There was one route where he's covering a dig route and he looks like he's playing wide receiver for a pick six. What was interesting was they didn't run that many different coverages in Colorado. Only 100 snaps in cover two, 4 snaps in quarters coverage, 9 snaps in cover six. It was just a lot of simplified playbook. And you see that on offense and on defense. And it's because he's the best player on both spots. And they just had to make sure that they're not overwhelming him, not just with the effort, but also just like with how much he can understand. But I think playing on both sides of the ball helps him on offense. I see the same thing with you. Like Browns at 2, they should play him at receiver. Giants should play him at receiver. Patriots should also play him at receiver. He's not falling past fourth overall.
He does a great job, as you pointed out, of like staying on a string with his quarterback outside of structure to locate and find that space and sit in it. And against zone, he knows when to attack that second window and not just stick in that first window and be covered by, defenders around him. It's because he's a rare cover corner. So like he knows how these corners and how these coverages are supposed to try and stop him. And he's one step ahead of them because of it. And we're talking about his movement and stuff. I still even saw him use his physicality to push off at the top of routes too. So I understand that he's 6 foot, 188 pounds, and we talk about a much bigger wide receivers, especially ones, by the way, that he was Colorado's ex wide receiver this year. Like he lined up out wide 95% of the time and almost always on the line of scrimmage. This
Yep.
has turned into the NFL like position where you just get by with like almost middling talents and just, as Matt Harmon put it, sacrifice them to coverages to open up your other guys. He played that spot and was their go-to player in many
Yeah.
of those instances. Now, I do wonder if part of that was to receive play calls and to make it super simplified for him, because actually last year he played the vast majority of the snaps in the slot on offense. But teams can see what they like best, both during the last 2 seasons, and figure out what their plan is of attack for him. I just love when players break the mold, because when we do this year after year, it feels like there are so many similar prospects and we can find this one in every single draft class. You surely cannot find a Travis Hunter in every
No.
single draft class, if ever again.
Yeah, no, truly. I think like we have to take a second to appreciate what we're watching with this one. We just cannot let this guy go by. And the other thing is, he's not going to school anymore, so maybe he has a better chance of understanding things. Like he's spending half of his time, actually going to the classroom too, which you won't have to
Well,
do
I
in the
will add on top of that, like even in the NFL, you only have a limited time for meetings every single week. So while this is your full time job, it's not like you can spend 24 hours at
right.
the headquarters at the facility. So he still is going to lean on one position more than the
Yep.
other. And I even think splitting it 50-50 might make it even more difficult.
Yeah, I would play him at wide receiver. I think Jay Gruden had a good point. He was like joking when he was simplifying this, but he was like, play some man coverage on third downs if you need him playing on the other side of the ball. Like, is it that complicated? Like, he was like, let's get him over on offense, and then if he has to play cover two or man coverage on third downs because a team needs his coverage ability, then sure, do that. And I just think that these teams, the Browns need wide receivers, they need offense. The Giants need offense. The Patriots need offense. So you're just looking at those three teams. Like to me, a corner is not moving the needle. And for him, Travis Hunter, wide receivers get paid a hell of a lot more. And there's a lot more consistency season after season. And I think like when I was comparing him on at corner, like my comp for him on corner was Sauce Gardner, who's been an all pro, and then last year was closer to average. And I think that on offense, like you're getting like if you're an elite player, you're getting elite season after elite season after elite season. Corner is a little bit more in flux. So I would rather take his ball skills, which is like the thing that we're talking about this whole episode, and choose how many times I'm getting the ball skills shown off, which you do on offense and not on defense.
I believe there were 4 wide receivers last year that averaged 10 or more targets per game. I could easily see him fitting in that boat if he plays, 80 to 90 to 100% of snaps
Mm-hmm.
on offense. And the flip side is on defense, if the other team doesn't want to target you, they just don't target you, like we have seen with some of the best corners across the league. So could you be more impactful on the offensive side of the ball? To me, the answer is
Yes.
is probably yes. 63% contested catch rate for his career. 63%. And that's dating back to, his first year at Jackson State, where he was the number one high school recruit in the country. And then again, over these last 2 years at Colorado. This past year, a 10.6 ADOT with a 5 yard per average after the catch per reception. I did see some sweet spin moves after the catch too.
Oh
He's
yeah.
certainly not going to win necessarily like his physicality in that area, but
Mhm.
we are drafting him to create separation and go up and come down with every single pass in his direction because his hands are
Yep.
ludicrous. And speaking of that, he creates explosives, like 14 catches this past year, 20 plus yards down the field on 27 targets. And I'll say if a few more of those targets were on target, then he'd have a few more of those 20+ yard catches.
Yeah, I did want to mention that. There were some deep balls, some seam balls, some go balls on the sideline that could have been touchdowns that just were, quite frankly, underthrown. And maybe Shador's just like, well, if this turns into a back shoulder, we got a first down because of how good of his ball skills are. You just can't miss him deep. But yeah, I saw the same exact thing where I thought the quarterback play was good, but it was not sensational, especially down the field where Travis Hunter was consistently getting wide open. If I was going to put a couple weaknesses, I will say he's a small guy and he played in a pretty bad conference. Like you're looking for like corners that are going to be in the NFL. Didn't see a whole lot of that. And like you said, if he's going to be playing X wide receiver, you're going to see big physical press corners who were playing in the SEC or the Big Ten,
But
and
at
you
the
didn't
same
see a
time, I
bunch
don't
of
know if he
that.
has to play X. Like, I think it
He
could
doesn't.
easily be their movement Z and, work
I agree.
outside to inside. I just think,
Yeah.
like, they had to play him in one spot this year because that's all the time they had to teach him that one spot,
Yes.
even if they maybe didn't even have time to teach him one spot.
For sure. Yeah, I completely agree. It's just like the strength of schedule thing just needs to be brought up a little bit because you're just not sometimes when you watch like the Brian Thomases and Malik Neighbors from the last season, it's like every single game is against the corner that's going to be going in the top 50. You just don't see that with Travis Hunter. I think he would just shred him immediately. I'm not concerned about that at all. So yeah, my comps were the same ones that you had. I had Justin Jefferson if he develops. Now Justin Jefferson's like the best route runner on top of having all these movement skills that we're talking about. Odell Beckham, Garrett Wilson, like these guys are sensations out there, and I think that's what you're getting with Travis Hunter. But I think that his upside is even better than Garrett Wilson's is.
One more negative is, and I think it's because of the offense, and you said the defense was geared around him. He had a limited route tree on a number of games and a number of occasions, just a whole bunch of meaningless hitch routes.
Yes.
There weren't as many like digs or in breakers. A lot of it kind of was on those vertical planes plus slants. And then we already talked about the zone coverage. But then when you do get those opportunities, he was sensational on them. So it's just a matter of doing that more and more and getting those reps in more and more. And I do want to point out, and this goes to what you were saying about the competition. The season opener this year against North Dakota State, I think might be the single best performance
Yeah.
of any prospect I've watched this season. Like
Yeah.
they must be having nightmares about him. It was just bully you, moss you, contested catch over you, and then just make you whiff in the open field over and over
Mhm.
and over again.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't even bring up his speed. Like, there's plenty of times where he's just running right by guys and splitting gaps. I did not think that were available to him. So yeah, he's awesome. Like the Browns should take him at number two, and I think we recorded this before the draft. I think they will take him at number two. He's that unique.
All right. That does it. If you're new around here, hit that subscribe button. Go and watch all the other wide receiver prospects on this channel. By the way, we are ranking the top wide receiver prospects in the 2025 draft class. I would be stunned if Hayden and I do not have him, Travis Hunter, as the number one wide receiver in this class. So we'll check in the next video. See ya.